and their project. I don't know to what extent you can give a little bit background about what was in the press and what reality is, because I think there's a little bit of disconnect. And I know days before the article that came out in the press, we had meetings with OCTA that were pretty good, and we thought things were on course. Andy can, I could talk to Andy about it or talk to you. I don't know who would be better. And I've also had conversations immediately after that with our representative, Jamie Federico, who's our OCTA representative. And are you able to address some of the concerns that were raised about the OCTA and armoring our beaches? And
I think I know about as much as everyone else, and I only know as much as what they've published.
Okay, well, maybe Andy, can you speak to that?
So we did have a chance to meet with the executive director of OCTA, and we told him that we need to have better communication. We need to be given a better heads up about when things are happening with OCTA, not just with sand, but when there's rail closures and some of the other work they're doing. We were assured that that would happen. That was on Friday. By Monday afternoon, they had announced a project that we hadn't heard about. So I had an opportunity to talk with OCTA after that. They assured me that these are conceptual, much like what we're going through with our nature-based solutions, and we're looking at different alternatives that might be able to be used. This is not a project that has been approved by the board. This is the first time it's even been presented in a conceptual manner. So I really appreciate the residents being here tonight. This is the time. I still think we're early enough in the project. This is the time for us to get very involved and let them know that this is not the alternative we want them to choose, that we want them to choose the more nature-based sand. And again, for the same cost, I think that they can protect the railroad just as well and in the longer term, protect their revetment even better with sand than putting more rock on the revetment.
Yeah. And I had those same conversations. Yeah.
Could I ask a question on that really quickly?
Yes.
What can our citizens here do to make their voices heard to OCTA, and then what can we as a council do to reinforce those voices?
You know, that's a really good question. One of the things I would say is that it's really important that our city council continues to do what the mayor did and talk with the board members and make sure the board members understand what our issues are. And the residents, certainly, they show up, they go to these hearings, they make their voice known. But I do think that providing things in writing, a letter to OCTA, that's something that doesn't go away. You don't just make a comment and then people forget about it. I think it's really important to put these things down in writing, make sure they're part of the record so that we can continue to refer to the record. I think that that's really important.
Can I ask a question? Excuse me for my voice. It's grandfather chasing grandkids' voice. A letter would be nice, but what's the practicality of adopting an ordinance to prohibit any entity from initiating a project that would mitigate or compromise our sand replenishment?
You know, Councilmember, I think that's an excellent idea. Staff and I have discussed the possibility of bringing an ordinance to you that basically says we recognize that there are certain areas in our coast that need to be armored. We understand that, you know, a railroad's going to sit on top of a revetment. It's got to sit on something that's level and some of those kinds of things. But we would like to pass, but at least have the city council consider an ordinance that says any time that there is any kind of modification to any kind of armoring, that it must be accompanied by a sand on the beach to protect that. Because why put the armoring in if you're not, first the armoring is going to cause additional scouring if it goes right up to the armoring. If you can keep the water away from the armoring, then the armoring is effective. So I think we should pass an ordinance that at least makes people recognize that when you come to San Clemente, if armoring is required, then you've got to be able to protect that armoring with sand on the beach.
I would only add one of the things we're trying to do is open up better communication. Our communications with OCTA has not been the best over the years. So we opened up dialogue with executive leadership. I've opened up dialogue with the members of the board. I think we can develop a better relationship with them, be more in line with what they're doing. And they've agreed to that, to open those communications. But yeah, that said, even as this project, before we heard the full extent that it was a conceptual project, we talked about what can we do to, I mean, we don't have to let them stage everything in our parking lots. I mean, we do have tools, as you mentioned, to stop some of that things if they're going to do it unilaterally. And I think those are the kind of things that we have to consider, but we have to do it in a measured way, I believe, and with dialogue with them, hoping that we get open up that dialogue and get a better understanding from them. This project that's been in the papers is, as we now know, is conceptual. It's a lot of ideas they're putting out there. We're going to make sure, and we will communicate, and we have communicated our concerns to them that we want sand on our beach, not rocks. And we're also looking at going to the Coastal Commission and getting as remediation sand on the beach. And one of the things that we've learned that what they're trying to do is petition for a sand bank as opposed to sand actually being put on the beach. So we're fighting that, and we will continue. And I know that this city council is ahead of me on all these issues of putting sand on the beach, and so we're out there advocating for this, just as the city wants.
Mayor,
Yeah,
just to close out that, I just didn't want to get lost in the point, because I had a point about that issue of what residents can do. First of all, there was another problem with the OCTA report. They said they didn't believe that sand is a good buffer and a protection.
Yeah.
They specifically and affirmatively said that, and that's not correct. There is science-based evidence to suggest that sand is the best buffer, right? So for them to say that's not true, or that there's questions about that, is problematic, regardless of whether they say it's conceptual. The other thing is, they're having a hearing tomorrow at the San Clemente Community Center. It's the best kept secret. I think they're hoping nobody will show up, but it's at 10 a.m. at the community center. So if you want to have your voice heard, that's the place to do it, right? That's the place to lay down the gauntlet and let OCTA know that San Clemente as a community is not going to accept rocking and armoring of our shoreline to the detriment of the loss of the beach, right? So there is a lot of things you can do, but if they're going to have something in San Clemente, we better show up, right? So 10 a.m. on a Wednesday, interesting timing. Also, again, I didn't see anything about this. I heard it from Leyland Connolly at the OC Register. That was the first I had ever heard of it. So you can show up at that too. I just wanted to make that point, sorry, before we moved on from that.
No, just two really quick points. One is, I think the mayor mentioned a really important item, and that is that it's unclear to me. I'm being told that OCTA is being informed by the Coastal Commission that the Coastal Commission would prefer to have, rather than them place sand on our beach, to give them money to place in the sand bank, that then the Coastal Commission will determine where in the state to put the sand. It won't necessarily come to San Clemente. And so one of the things I think we should do is we should make it clear, and I think the mayor's already written a letter. I think residents would help as well, to write a letter to the Coastal Commission and say, we would prefer it not go into the sandbank. We prefer there be mitigation on our beach and that actual sand be placed on our beach in accordance with this emergency permit that was issued. I think that's really important. I don't want to see the money go into some account that no one knows where that sand's going to end up. I think we should push for sand rather than linen.
Yep.
So, and then the other thing, Mayor, we've been talking a lot about scoop.
Yes.
There may be some, first, the residents of this community know more about, coastal issues than most communities. But maybe we could explain a little bit about what scoop does, why it's important, and why we're trying to get it. Because really what it does is it allows us to place sand in other parts